Welcome to another episode of What Did the Patient Say with Doctors Dana and Lauren Brindisi, sisters and owners of Carolina Functional Neurology Center. We are providing you answers to frequently asked questions and bringing you inside information from real conversations we have with patients on a daily basis. Our goal is to spread the truth on health and healing because we believe everyone deserves to know the answers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Moret from Carolina Functional Neurology Center. I am here with my patient, Alicia, from Ghana. She is tuning with us from Ghana to come and share her story. So welcome to What Did the Patient Say? And this is something that all of our doctors try to contribute and talk with our patients so that people who are listening can hear these other people, our patients' stories and resonate and answer questions and hear that they're not alone. And this is something that they experience and know that there's help out there. So Alicia, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to share my story with you all because it's something that has changed my life forever. So I'm just honored to be able to share what Dr. Moret and her team did for me. So hello.
Alicia's a great story. Let's start with what brought you in and kind of that background.
Yeah, so if I think back on the first time I walked into your office, it's almost like a PTSD feeling because I was so incredibly sick when I walked into your office. I had been to probably 4 urgent cares, spent thousands of dollars in emergency medical services. I had been sick for probably a good year and a half before I found Dr. Moret and her team. What brought me in was the fact that after going to several primary care doctors and emergency clinics, they could not find anything significant. So they did all the testing, the blood work, the urinalysis, the common things that you would test for. But I literally felt like I was dying. It was this body pain that was so severe, a nerve pain that they couldn't explain. Also, I had extreme fatigue and extreme irritability. Almost, it was like I thought I had hormonal issues as well, but I was very sick, and it got to a point to where I was having issues with my blood pressure. It would drop and bottom out suddenly, and I would pass out. And at first they thought maybe it was POTS syndrome, which from the outside, it did seem like that, but I wasn't passing out when I was standing up or laying down. So they had to rule that out. They ruled out multiple things. And still, after a year of constantly being incredibly sick and not knowing what was wrong with me, a doctor that I had seen multiple times had given me a diagnosis of long COVID. But I didn't feel certain that's what this was because I do have a background in functional medicine and I worked for Genova Diagnostics. And I knew that something inwardly, something in my body was not right. And it was causing all of these terrible symptoms. And it didn't feel like long COVID. I couldn't understand why, if I had a virus or if I would get any sort of minor infection, it would put me back at the emergency room trying to figure out what was wrong with me because it was so intense. The nerve pain was so intense, and the body aches and the fatigue. And so after this whole journey, I got the diagnosis, or the blanket diagnosis, of long COVID. And which I'm sure many of you may have experienced that or are experiencing that, because I think that happens sometimes when you just really don't know what is happening. But so I started looking into the best functional doctors out there. I started looking on the internet. I was searching everywhere for someone to help me manage my symptoms because the doctor that I had seen, a primary care doctor, told me that basically the only thing that they could do was try to manage my symptoms. Of course, they tried some high-powered medications, which left me with more symptoms. And I knew with my background in functional medicine that those prescriptions are just a band-aid to the problem. There was a real root of something going on in my body that needed to be addressed. And so I started researching functional medicine doctors and looking at the reviews and doing a lot of research on doctors who could help me manage my symptoms like chronic fatigue, body pains, body aches, muscle aches, all of the things that I was experiencing. And when I looked at Carolina Functional Neurology, they checked all the boxes, and there was so many amazing reviews online. And so I decided, I took a leap of faith and called the office, and everyone was so amazing. From the time that I called the office until the time that I met Dr. Moret, it was an easy, smooth process, and they were very informative. And what I love most about Carolina Functional Neurology is that Dr. Moret did an initial call with me to gain information from me, to see if really she could help me. And I really appreciate that, because she didn't go into it thinking, okay, well, just come on in and I'll help you. She really took an approach to, I need to learn what's going on with you. I'd like to get to know you. I'd like to get to know your symptoms and what's going on with you initially. And so that's what led me to Carolina Functional Neurology, and just the care and the passion that you all have is really what brought me there. But you also have so many amazing testimonials on your website, and it's true because I'm one of those testimonies. So
I love it. Yeah, I remember that phone call. I remember us like talking about your symptoms, and I remember saying like, I think we need to take a look at you. Like, I think, I'll have a better understanding once we do actually examine you and have that understanding. And then it was, and what was kind of unique about your case is your case like unfolded, I would say, like as, we understood what was happening with the brain, and then we targeted you improved, but always kind of like cyclically symptoms would kind of reappear, even though they weren't as intense and they were better. And that's what kind of like systematically led us to uncovering what actually was causing your symptoms.
Yes.
You want to share? Yeah.
I can share, which was I don't know, to be honest. I don't know that any other office or doctor could have pinpointed this. And I say that, I don't say that lightly, because Dr. Moret, you listened to me. You were, like you said, it was an approach where you didn't come in and just throw a bunch of tests at it. You came in and you really cared about what was happening to me. And you were very attentive. So you would ask in-depth questions about, okay, well, journal this, or if you do this, how do you feel? And then you also took an approach, which I really appreciated from my functional medicine background, is you would kind of test my immune system with certain supplements and certain practices, certain treatment, where you would test my immune system to see how it was responding to certain things, because it seems like a immune response to something, maybe viral or something along those lines. And so you were slow about it so that it didn't throw me into really awful symptoms. You would just test certain things, and then we would regroup. And so this went on for a few months, like you said, and I learned so much about my body through you educating me as well, and how I was responding to certain things and certain treatment. So we tested these things out together. I felt like you were a partner with me in it. Like you were very compassionate, and you listened to me, and you answered all of my questions. And so eventually, after doing all of this testing of my immune system, I remember the day that I came into your office after taking some liquid glutathione, And I'm like, oh no, we can't take this anymore. This is making me feel awful. And you said, that's interesting. Let me do some more research. So you didn't just assume, you kept doing research. And then you came back and you said, I have a question for you. Have you ever been exposed to mold?
Yeah, we went back.
I
was like, hold on, take me back again. Let's go back.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So you said, it seems as if your body is not detoxing because of all of the work that you had done prior to how I responded to certain things, which is an amazing approach to what your practice does. And so you asked me if I'd ever been exposed to mold, that you believe that my body maybe somehow wasn't detoxing. And of course, my mind went back to yes, I have been exposed to mold, but I wasn't educated on what unfolded next. There was so many things that unfolded next that would shock me. And I have an intimate relationship with a very toxic form of mold now, knowing that that's what it was and being healed now. And so when you said that, it brought me back to, yes, I actually had moved into an apartment that was damp. It was a basement apartment. And there was some mold, and I started just cleaning the mold with just household cleaners, mold cleaners, and didn't think much about it because for me, I've heard, I think the world needs to be better educated. And Dr. Moret, you're really good at educating people on what mold toxicity looks like. Mm-hmm. Because for myself, I thought it would be respiratory issues like coughing and allergies, like sneezing, and lots of immune response in that aspect. But I've found through my own experience that mold can attack our bodies in so many different ways. It depends on so many factors. It depends on your DNA, your genetics, and how well your body can actually detox certain molds. And also there's just so many factors and there's so many different symptoms. And what I've realized in my case, it was misdiagnosed as some type of, honestly, they tried to diagnose me with depression and like it was diagnosed as a mental issue because I had this extreme irritability and almost rage sometimes. And so I had no idea that mold could cause these such severe symptoms. Mm-hmm. So we definitely came to that realization together as we worked together with my treatment. So yes, I'll let you.
No, and I think it's important to highlight for like people listening as like a patient or maybe a possible patient is by the time you and I, like that conversation happened where I was like, take me back, hold on, let's go back to the very beginning one more time. And I always tell people like, the first thing they teach you in school is your patients know what's going on. You just got to listen.
That's right.
And then they also teach you to take a really good history because it is so important. And I know we had gone through history. We've done these things. And at this point you had done at least like your initial round of care and you had improvement and you better, but you still had kind of these cyclical bouts of symptoms, of course, obviously with pain and any symptoms that doesn't feel good. And that's something like a timeline I like to draw out for people listening is like, we were, continuing with care. Like we were a couple months in, and like not every process is so linear, or like not every process is solved within a month or two. It's sometimes takes months or even a few months, sometimes even up to a year for some patients. It just kind of depends. But yeah, taking it back to your history, it was like, walk me through when all this started one more time. And then I can't remember what you said something. And I was like, and it kind of like just pinged in my head. I was like, have you been exposed to mold? And so, yeah. And we tested and we uncovered that and we treated it.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe if you could share some of the treatments that you did do here in the office, we always get all those questions like, what does treatment look like? And it looks so different for everyone, but what did treatment kind of consist of for you? And then kind of talk about like, what does your life look like now with your maintenance, and like how are you doing now?
Yes. So I would say to any patient that is listening and you're on the fence about treatment or don't really know, and you think, oh, well, I've never really heard of this type of treatment. Does it really work? I'm going to be honest, because I had those initial thoughts. I'm like, well, I don't really know. Like, is this treatment? Is this going to work? I trusted the process because I was at a all-time low. I was so desperate. So don't get to that point before you trust the process, because Carolina Functional Neurology, they are, they're just the best. They know what they're doing. You guys know what you're doing. And treating the brain first, because my brain was so inflamed from the mold and there was so much going on up here after doing the initial testing. Mm-hmm. So that first appointment where I had lots of testing done, my thoughts were like, okay, what is this? Because I'd never been exposed to it, because it's different. It's going to be different than traditional medicine, primary care doctor testing. But that's good because it gets to the root problems. And so I trusted the process, and Dr. Moret showed me all of the results, and I'm like, wow, my brain really isn't functioning in that area. And I couldn't believe it, because it was so much detailed information, and I knew that my brain was sick. But then we had to figure out how to heal it. We had to figure out how to heal my brain and my gut and all of these things that were going on in my body. And so the treatment was amazing. It was exactly what I needed. And I did start to feel better after a couple of weeks, slowly. But then I'd have a setback. But that's how our bodies heal sometimes. That's especially if you're dealing with a chronic illness or disease. It's not like a miracle. Although sometimes it can be. It's not just a miracle fix, but you have to trust the process. And then you also have to do the work at home. And Dr. Moret stressed that to me as well. Proper diet and doing the things that she tells you to do at home and following the proper guidelines. And every time I failed to do that, I noticed that I would have some kind of setback. And so it really works best when you are also doing the work with the office and your doctor. But I had multiple rounds of hyperbaric oxygen treatment, which is a lifesaver. I was in so much pain, constantly nerve pain. After a couple of rounds of that, I could tell that my body it was like a sigh of relief, because it was helping kill the mycotoxins in my body. It would kill off a lot of this mold every time we would do it. And we found that the amount of mold in my body was just off the charts. So even after a few weeks of the H-bot, I started to feel a difference. Of course, I wasn't completely healed, and it wasn't just a miracle cure, but it was a number of things compiled together. It was a complication of treatment that really kicked the mold out of my body, which was red light therapy, cognitive therapy, lots of cognitive therapy. And initially I wasn't sure if that was going to work. I'm like, well, put me back in the H-bot. That's what I was thinking, but it has to work this way. It has to
work. A metronome.
Yes. Oh, the metronome. It was my arch nemesis. The metronome.
Yeah, yes. It's one of a lot of people's favorite.
Yes, because it aggravated my neurotransmitters. It aggravated my agitation, and it was good though. That was good. And slowly, Dr. Moret would adjust the treatment as needed if it was really causing some major issues to my body. So we would do a lot of these combinations of therapy along with a full complex detox supplement regimen. Mm-hmm. And that also really helped a whole lot. And that combined with the treatment, also combined with my lifestyle and diet, because I had to be careful of certain foods that were that could be contaminated with mold, like peanuts and coffees and refined breads and those types of things that could be contaminated with mold. Like any little amount of mold would throw me into a full-blown relapse with it. And so treatment was amazing. It took what, I think it was like maybe 8 months of treatment or something, or maybe longer. I'm just trying to remember the timeline.
Like all in, like start to very finish, 8 months.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was but it was something I looked forward to every week, because Dr. Moret and the team there, they're amazing, and they're just like friends. They're family to me now, because they listened and helped me. Not only did they help me with healing my body, but it's so hard to be chronically ill and not know what's going on. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. There's also an emotional aspect to this. And Dr. Moret was really good at seeing that and navigating through it and helping me not only physically, but emotionally in some of these situations, because mold does attack our emotions as well. Yeah. So the team was so awesome. Treatment was amazing. I started to feel better within a couple weeks, but I still had major setbacks until we could really, because it's not just with mold illness, you can't just throw a bunch of treatment at it initially. Like you have to ease your body into certain things, and she could tell when it was too much, and then we would adjust the treatment a little bit. And so it was a process, but I'm so thankful for this process, because I am completely healed. There have not been any days since I moved to Africa back in January. Me and my husband were missionaries, and we moved to Africa in January of this year. But even before that, I think my treatment ended around December, and we were still managing. We were still in treatment, and I had come a long way, but I didn't realize that I needed to even further remove myself from a moldy environment. So we had another setback, because I didn't realize, because we were missionaries, we lived in a camper, and the camper actually tested for mold. I was doing really well, and treatment was working, and everything was great. And then all of a sudden I have a setback, a really bad one, where I got very, very sick. And so Dr. Moret was asking me questions about, okay, where are you living and this and that. And so we started to talk more about it. And I realized that maybe I should get the camper tested for mold. And it came back with 4 different types of mold in the camper. And you couldn't visually see the mold. So that's the thing about mold is, excuse me, you don't know. You can't see it. And so, because there's spores. And so the mold tested positive, or the camper tested positive for mold. And then here we go again. I had to move out of the camper and then move into my in-laws' house. And then I got better. I started to get a lot better. And then we moved to Africa. And it's been such a game changer. And I'm not saying you need to move to Africa if you have mold illness, but you do need to be aware of your surroundings. You need to be aware of your living conditions. And there's so many different factors that comes into play. And Dr. Moret is really good about asking the appropriate questions and getting you to a place of understanding mold. So I moved to Africa, and the buildings are made of cinder block. And there's no sheetrock. So within the first day, it was like, wow, I have been very sick. And the treatment, along with knowing my surroundings and my environment, it brought me to a complete healing. And now I have not had any body pain whatsoever. I've not had any, even twinge of pain, no nerve pain at all. And also I have no fatigue, even though it's very hot here.
And you're doing hard work, and you're working hard.
but not the mold fatigue. And then the anger is gone. And so I manage the symptoms. And so I'm coming back to the States in August, which I would like to, Dr. Moret will manage your symptoms based on how you're feeling and what's going on. And also, I know that the hyperbaric oxygen chamber is just so powerful. And so when I come back to the States, I'm gonna do more of that. But now I'm managing my symptoms by regular exercise, because that gets your lymphatic system going. And so I'm finally able to go running again, which I'm so excited.
That was something that pointed us in that direction.
Yes.
I just want to highlight that really quick, because I thought that was interesting. You didn't tolerate glutathione very well, but then it was after working out. Like, I remember you were like, I went for a run, and I think I saw you that day or the next day or something, and it was the most symptomatic I had seen you up to that point. And I was like, what happened? And like asking those questions, like, you went for a run, and like, just like patients listening to this. Now, this doesn't mean every time you go for a run you feel terrible, you have mold issues, but a lot of what happens during exercise is like your lymphatic system gets into gear, like your blood flow goes all those things have to increase when we exercise, and it will liberate a lot of toxins into your bloodstream, especially if you can't get rid of it, and especially if you're not sweating properly and all those things. So that was something that as you said that, I was like, oh. And instead of being kind of written off and saying, oh, you're just tired and you shouldn't exercise when you're tired, just like do something like low key, to me, that was like being like, something's going on when you exercise. And so that kind of pointed us in that direction, like starting to kind of point us going, what is going on from a detoxification perspective? Right. The lights turning on. And then, the big thing is figuring out where the mold is coming from. And with your history, we knew it was from a prior exposure. And again, when we hit kind of a small barrier, we were like, where are you currently living? Right. And that's something that a lot of people have to reflect on and go, where am I living? Do I have mold in my house? And it's a rabbit hole to start going down.
Yes.
Working with someone is helpful, like anyone, to help you navigate that rabbit hole.
Yeah, and you were very good at that because you asked the right questions. So it's really all about asking the right questions and truly listening to your patients. And like you said, getting a full history and all of the symptoms and what is happening. And sometimes it can change. And that's what we all need to be aware of. And it is, for me, and I'm sure it is for a lot of patients, it can be very disappointing when you think you're healed and everything is fine. And then all of a sudden something happens and you're right back to where you started, but you're really not. And that's how I had to look at it. I had to look at it as in, I am healing. It may just not be in the time that I want it to be, but I am healing. And I have more knowledge about what is going on with my body. And it may be a slow process and you could have setbacks, but it's amazing what you do, Dr. Moret, because you help patients through those setbacks, and you dig further and you ask the right questions. And that's what you did with me. And you didn't just give up when you're like, oh, well, you shouldn't be running, you're sick. And I'm like, well, no, I felt good the day before, so I don't understand why I can't do this now. And that's where I think it can get a little disheartening for patients. But I just want to tell you not to give up and to trust Dr. Moret and her team, because it will get better and you will heal. It just may take some time. And I know that Carolina Functional Neurology, they changed my life forever because they were there for me and listened to my body and listened to my stories, listened to the history, but also was just amazing through all the treatment and very understanding. Because I think when we come to this point, as a patient myself, I was pretty broken. I was at a point where I felt like no one could help me. And I was even skeptical. But they knocked it out of the park because everything that they did for me and everything, all of the treatment that I went through was vital to my recovery. And now I'm able to be a missionary in Ghana because there's no way that I could have come over here and helped. We help orphans, we help children, and there's no way I would have had the stamina or the health to be able to do that without Carolina Functional Neurology and how they helped heal me. So just want to thank you so much for helping me.
Gonna make me cry over here. No, it's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure being a part of someone's health journey, whether it be short or long. Like it's a pleasure. So I'm so happy. Yeah, you and your husband do such great work. So I'm happy I could have a small little bit in that to help kids where you are, like just to help you help them. Like it's just awesome.
Yeah. You equipped me for doing this with my body, so I'm very thankful. And now I hardly have any issues, and I know my boundaries. I know that there may be some trace amounts of mold because it's sometimes if I eat, they call them ground nuts, but they're peanuts. Peanuts, because they can be highly contaminated if they're not stored properly. And so I realized I started to feel, it wasn't like I had a lot of pain, but I started to feel a little agitated when I would eat peanuts. And I'm like, oh, this is like a mild onset of like a mold reaction. And so I know my body so well now because you helped educate me on to look out for those symptoms and those signs. And so now I just eliminated the peanuts and that was it. Like it just went away. And so being knowledgeable about your own body is very important in your healing process as well.
Very. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all that.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to share.
Yeah. I mean, we have patients all the time that are like, you know, I've been through this. I've seen all the doctors. How can you help me? Like, what can you do differently? What does treatment look like? And I think those are all very fair and very understandable questions, but sometimes it's, you know, it's better heard from someone who's gone through it on the other side to go, okay, that's what it can be like. And we realize it's not a linear journey and there's setbacks and there's up and downs and there's emotional turmoil.
Yes.
Like, you know, it's just, it's an up and down ride. Even when you walk through our doors, like through the phases of healing. Right. So, but the goal is to get you. Yeah. But the goal is to figure out why. So, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes. Thank you for having me. And hopefully I get to see you soon in August. And
I know. I hope so too.
Oh,
no.
Sorry. Network issue.
There we go. And anyone who is listening or whatnot, like if you got questions, you have questions for us at all, please feel free to reach out on our platforms. Please feel free to follow or send us a message. Like we are the doctors behind all of that, behind the screens. We try to put as much content as we can out there to educate and to empower people. So please feel free to reach out. Please don't be shy. And if you want more episodes like this, or you have ideas for us, we're always looking for ideas to film or to put out. So please send all of that to us.
Yes, go see them. They rock. They're awesome. Thank you, Dr. Moret.
Thank
Hope
you.
to see you soon.
Oh, yeah.
Bye, y'all.